Madam, it is a personality like me. Carry forward the thank you. So my uncle actually is the benefactor of this foundation, and he worked in NASA. In fact, he was quite brilliant, and he accumulated a lot of money, which he left behind, not for us, but to promote the study of these Indic religions and basically promote our culture, where he lived most of his life. That was in Boulder. He lived there for 60 years. He had his best friend was a scientist, James Irwin, who landed on the moon. I think the fourth one, James Irwin. So we have a lot of interesting memories, but then he said, you become the caretakers of my money and promote Indian culture in US, where he lived most of his life. So that's what we are doing, and we have all these wonderful people, scholars, who are supporting us, and the students who have come here to learn about our culture and understand India more. We have a brilliant group here. So I think we are enjoying ourselves. Thank you.
It is my privilege to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Jeffrey DeLong, an eminent scholar and educator who has made significant contributions to the fields of religion, philosophy, and Asian studies. Dr. Long holds the Carl W. Ziegler Professorship at Elizabethtown College in Pennsylvania. Dr. Long is a prolific author whose works have become essential reading in the study of Indic traditions. Among his many books are Jainism, An Introduction and Hinduism in America, A Convergence of Worlds, which earned him the prestigious Rajendra and Jyoti Kanti Award for Excellence in Philosophy, Theology and Critical Reflection in 2022. His most recent publications, Discovering Indian Philosophy, An Introduction to Hindu, Jain and Buddhist Thought, further cements his reputation as a leading scholar in his field. In addition to his books, Dr. Long serves as the editor of Explorations in Indic Traditions, Ethical, Philosophical and Theological series by Lexington Books. Dr. Long's influence extends beyond academia. He has presented his work on global platforms, including 3 lectures at the United Nations in 2019. His commitment to promoting peace and non-violence through his scholarship is well known. In addition to his scholarly achievements, Dr. Long is a dedicated practitioner and spiritual guide. He and his wife have also been instrumental in establishing the Vedanta Society of Central Pennsylvania. We are truly honored to have Dr. Long with us today to share his insights and expertise. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Jeffrey DeLong.
Absolutely. So I'll just start by saying I always love to quote from one of my favorite people, Swami Vivekananda, or rather paraphrase him, "Sisters and brothers of India, thank you for your kind and cordial welcome." So I have very fond memories of this room. About 2 years ago I spoke here, and there were students sitting on the floor and standing in the back. And I've come now in the middle of exams. I apologize, but still, so many of you are here, and I'm grateful. And I hope you'll go back and study for your exam as soon as the talks are over. So the occasion of my coming here is you've now heard about this wonderful foundation, Uberoi Foundation, which Anuji and Jyotiji, their uncle, got started. I'm very privileged to be on their board of trustees. And this year the foundation has sponsored a study abroad program for American students who've never been to India, but who love India, who've been studying. They're all graduate students. They've been studying yoga philosophy, Shaiva philosophy, a great variety of things. And so I would like to introduce you to them. So we have here Jessica Ostenstern, Jessica Torrey. We have, yes, 2 Jessicas right there. And Sierra Holmes is with us. And Megan Ruppel. Allison Guerrero. And you're going to present to each of them?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So you are all going to get, I'll mention also Tessa Combe before I start mentioning. But could you each come up one at a time to be honored by our colleagues here at Delhi University? So Jessica, yeah, you can come first.
Have the students come forward. Please.
Thank you.
I hope you like them, enjoy.
And then Jessica Torrey, whose birthday was yesterday.
Yeah, look here. Look here. Fine. Thank you.
And Sierra Holmes.
Look here. Fine. Fine. Yeah. Fine. Look here.
So thank you for your warm welcome, for honoring us, for honoring our students. We're very, very grateful for the hospitality of Delhi University. So the presentation I'm going to give today, as you can see, is called Beyond Ahimsa, Jain Teachings and Practices of Compassion. I want to also mention that you see the Arihanta Institute mentioned very prominently here on the slide. Today's presentation is a summary, you could say, of a course that I recently developed for the Arihanta Institute. They're based in the US, they're a Jain organization, and they do wonderful work of teaching online courses. And if you're ever interested or inclined, check out their website. This course of mine was pre-recorded, it's 4 hours, and there are readings and so on, it's a proper course. But today you're going to get the short version, right, of this. So we go to the next slide, please. Here you see the logo of the Arihanta Institute. A beautiful picture of Lord Mahavir there. Next slide, please. So to give a quick overview, next slide. Practices of both nonviolence and compassion are rooted in the Jain worldview. Based on the teaching of Mahavir, we think he lived around the 6th century BC. This is one dating. This is according to the Digamba Jain system, the dating given from 599 to 527 BCE. And then, of course, the other 23 Tirthankaras, the great enlightened teachers who periodically emerge in our world and show the path to liberation. And so, in this presentation, I want to focus on the ethical implications of this worldview for how we all live with our fellow beings. I want to emphasize the word all. You don't have to be a Jain to practice nonviolence, to show compassion, to care for living beings. So I'm seeing this tradition as a repository of wisdom that can be shared with all of the world. And in fact, I was very gratified. On Saturday, we got to meet many people from the Jain community, including a very respected Digamba Muni here in Delhi, who spoke with us, spoke with our students, and found this reaffirmed, right? That we call this Jain because we're acknowledging and honoring its source. But I'm in the tradition of Sri Ramakrishna, but I am inspired by the Jain tradition. So I think anyone can learn from this tradition. So next slide, please. Let's see, and again. What is the background of Jain teachings on compassion? So most of you probably already know there are two major divisions within the Jain community, the Digambara and the Shvetambara, but there is a text on which they both agree. And this is called the Tattva Sutra. It was composed by the sage Umaswati. In the Digambara tradition, he's called Umaswami. Sometime we think between the 2nd and 5th centuries of the Common Era. Umaswati was not very concerned with telling us when he lived. He was concerned with showing us the truth and the way of life. And you see here a brief section from the Tattva Sutra, and I'm sure many of you can read this. Samyak Darshana Jnana Moksha Charitra Samyak Darshana Jnana Charitrani Moksha Margaha. And that is the first verse of the Tattva Sutra. Right perception, right knowledge, and right action are the path to liberation. Very famous verse from this text. But I want to concentrate on the 7th chapter. There's a couple more slides ahead. So, in the 7th chapter of the Tattva Sutra, we see 5 basic principles of Jain moral practice outlined. And those of you who've studied yoga philosophy will recognize them right away because they're also the yamas of Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga. So we have here Ahimsa and You're seeing many things here. I'll go ahead and just. Yeah, sure, absolutely. But I'll keep talking so we don't waste time. So we have ahimsa, nonviolence in thought, word, and action. That is the first. That is the primary. And then we have. Yes, there we go. Satya, telling the truth, abstaining from lying. And then asteya, non-stealing, dealing honestly with others. Brahmacharya, chastity, restraint. And then finally, aparigraha, non-ownership or non-attachment. Okay, here we go. Then in this same chapter, in the 7th chapter of the Tathagata Sutta, we see in addition, maitri, that is benevolence or kindness, friendliness toward all living beings. Pramoda, that is joy at the sight of the virtuous. According to Jain tradition, if you see something evil, something bad happening, some violence, and if you approve of it, it is almost as if you have committed that violence yourself. So on the reverse, you have pramoda. When we see the good, we should feel delighted. We should feel happy. Then you finally you have karunya, compassion for the afflicted. And then there is the principle of madhyastha, indifference toward those who do harm. I want to say something about this as well. What does this mean exactly, indifference to those who do harm? Well, again, when we see someone doing harm, if we approve of it, if we celebrate it, then we are doing harm ourselves, according to Jain tradition. Does this mean we should condemn those people and judge them and say, oh, you're a bad person? No. This state of madhyastha is a kind of suspension of judgment. The action is bad, but the person doing it is a soul, a jiva, a living being, who we hope will eventually learn the error of their ways. We've also all done harmful things, I guarantee it, or we would not have been reborn. So judging others, looking down upon them scornfully, is not condoned in the Jain tradition. We judge the action. We say, violence is wrong. The person who does the violence, they need to learn. Right? They need to learn. So let's say a little more about compassion specifically. While ahimsa is traditionally emphasized as the central Jain moral principle, compassion, karunya or daya, having a positive disposition toward and actively working for the welfare of living beings, is also essential for the spiritual path as conceived in the Jain tradition. Ahimsa and compassion are both dispositions that lead to the calming of something called the kashayas. Sometimes I often see this translated as passions. I don't like that translation. I think it has all kinds of incorrect implications. Some of these words cannot be translated by one single term. You've probably all heard of untranslatables in Sanskrit. This is one of them. We can translate it, but with an explanation. The negative dispositions that attract karmic matter, karmic energy into the soul. So that's what the kashayas are. And so both ahimsa and compassion serve to do that. They calm these kashayas, these dispositions. They include things like anger, greed, selfishness, but also things that we might normally think of as positive. Like if you get too excited about something, too carried away, even if it's a good thing, that's problematic from a Jain perspective, right? Because it disrupts the normal equanimity of the soul. Now, compassion and ahimsa can also be seen as logically implying one another. Because if you want to avoid doing harm to any living being in thought, word, or action, what do you want for those living beings? You don't want to harm them, so what do you want? Logically, that means you want them to thrive and be well and happy. And so that is what we call compassion. You can think of ahimsa and compassion as two sides of a coin. They logically imply one another. The great modern Jain teacher, Srimad Rajchandra, who was a highly revered teacher, we can go to the next slide, highly revered teacher of the modern period. Sometimes he's called Gandhi's guru. He was not Gandhi's guru in a formal sense. He didn't give him diksha or anything of that sort. But he greatly inspired him, and the two of them were very good friends. When Gandhi came back from England after earning his law degree and was staying in Mumbai, then called Bombay, he got to know Srimad Rajchandra. He was tremendously impressed with him. And the two of them were almost like twin souls in many respects. A keen aspiration towards spirituality and away from materiality. And then when Gandhi got his job as an attorney in South Africa, the two of them corresponded throughout Gandhi's time in South Africa. Before Gandhi returned permanently to India, Srimad Rajchandra left his body, left this world. So, but they had a lot of close collaboration. And Rajchandra wrote some important texts in the Jain tradition. And there's a text that is called the Moksha Mala. And if you look at the 9th lesson of the 2nd book of this text, it outlines many essentials of Jain practice, including 8 forms of compassion. So compassion was important enough to Srimad Rajchandra that he elaborated on it in a very systematic way. So he elaborates on each of these as follows. So we'll do them just one at a time. So first, I'll just speak about this one, Dravya Daya. And these are Rajchandra's own words. He says, vigilantly undertaking what is required to be done to avert violence to other beings. This is called Dravya, material compassion. Our students saw a beautiful example of this on Saturday when we met the Digambar Muni. There was a moment when he stood up and he wanted to, the platform on which he was sitting, he wanted to move it closer to the students. So he got off and someone helped move the platform. And before there was a mat on the platform on which he was sitting. Before he returned to the platform, he quickly lifted up the mat and swept it with his peacock feather whisk, his pichi. And why did he do that? It was not a concern with cleanliness. Just in case some little insect decided they wanted to go there, he's making sure that they're not going to be harmed when he sits again on the mat. Very simple gesture, but you'll see Jain Munis and Jain Sadhvis do these things all the time. And that might be difficult for those of us who are not monastics, who travel around in the world. But we can also minimize the harm that we do. And so to diligently, vigilantly, deliberately avoid harm, this is Dravyadaya. Then we come to the next one, Bhavadaya, which is on the screen right now. Giving right instructions on seeing someone dragging towards the lower state of existence is called Bhavadaya, modal compassion. So what this means is giving good advice. If you see someone that is on a harmful path, harmful to themselves and others, it's appropriate to intercede with him. Kindly, compassionately, not judgmentally, but to say, my friend, you're heading off a cliff. Let's go in another direction. Swadaya is the next. Proceeding towards the religious life with contemplation that this soul has been in the grip of wrong perception since infinity, that it does not understand the fundamentals and does not resort to the directives of the omniscient lords. This is called swadaya, compassion for the self. Understanding that we ourselves have made many, many mistakes. Like I said, if we hadn't, we wouldn't have been reborn. We wouldn't be here. This is our school, this world. Right? This is where we're learning. And so, as you know, you're all students. When you're in school, it means you have things to learn. And so that's called a form of compassion to self, because you're acknowledging and recognizing your own ignorance. And this is not a criticism. This is not something where we're saying, I'm ignorant, therefore I'm stupid. Right? It's not that. It's saying, I'm ignorant, I've been in the grip of samsara for all of these eons. Once I know that, I can begin taking the steps to change my orientation to the world. So that's swadaya. Then we have next pardaya, protecting 6 types of living beings. This is called pardaya. In the Jain tradition, they're very fond of lists. So your first question might be, what are the 6 types of living beings? Here they are. They are those with earth bodies, water bodies, fire bodies, air bodies, plant bodies, and mobile bodies. So these are, of course, traditional elements that we see in Indic traditions. Today we would probably call these states of matter, right? Solid bodies, liquid bodies, gaseous bodies, and so on. And then, so these types of bodies are very, very small, according to the Jain tradition. They're almost imperceptible with our visual senses, but the soul can sense them directly. And then you have amalgamations of these forms, and these become plants. We all know what plants are. And then mobile bodies, this is referring to basically animals, right? Beings that can move about. So there's no limitation on the beings that we are obligated to protect. Next we have Svarupadaya, contemplating over one's true nature with full discernment is called Svarupadaya, compassion for our true nature. What does this mean? Well, we are not the physical body. We are currently inhabiting a physical body. we do need to care for it because that's our vehicle, right? If you have a car, if your car breaks down, you're not going to get very far. Same with the body. And a few of our group, unfortunately, couldn't be with us today because they're having car trouble, meaning physical trouble, right? And some challenges. So it's important to care for the body in that sense, but we are not the body. Our true nature is soul. Our true nature is jiva. We might say this a lot if we study Indian philosophy, but I think we sometimes need to pause and just think about its full implications. If we are not the body, if we are the jiva, if we are the Atman, Jain tradition also uses the term Atman, we are eternal. We are beings whose essential nature is indestructible. Therefore, important though it is to care about the body, the true you can never be destroyed, so there's nothing to fear. And this is a very helpful type of compassion to oneself that one can display, especially when you're having a physical problem. And I've had some experience with this a few years ago. I broke my ankle. I was stuck in hospital. And I'm very grateful that when this happened to me, it had been after I'd been doing a spiritual practice, doing sadhana for many years, because I could apply that to my situation, and it helped me get through that experience. So this is showing compassion to oneself by recalling one's true nature. Then we have Anubandhadaya. Anubandhadaya, this is, in America we call this tough love. Use of harsh words by a guru while teaching may seem inappropriate. Since its purpose, however, is to further the interest of the pupil, it is called Anubandhadaya, resultant compassion. So sometimes our teachers can say very harsh things to us that we're not very happy hearing. But they're not saying it because of hatred. They're not saying it because they want to harm us, they want to make us feel small. In fact, it's the opposite. They want us to learn, they want us to do better. And if we are heading off in the wrong direction, sometimes they might need to correct our course rather abruptly. And so we have this also as a type of compassion. Vyavaharadaya, this is, you could translate this as everyday compassion. Vigilantly resorting to compassion as it may be necessary is called Vyavaharadaya, practical compassion. As it may be necessary, what does that mean? Well, all of the other forms of compassion we've been talking about refer to a particular type of disposition that we're cultivating. This refers to really more of our interactions with the external world. Again, Vyavahara, the everyday world. When you see someone suffering, help them. Right? As the occasion arises, right? As it may be necessary. So that's Vyavaharadaya. Then we come to the highest, the eighth form of compassion, Nishchayadaya, the ultimate compassion, concentrating on the wholesome objective, i.e. moksha, and remaining absorbed therein is called Nishchayadaya, absolute compassion. And Srimad Chandra elaborates on this a little further for us. This denotes averting self-delusion and cognizing the innate nature of the soul. We are divine beings, right? So realizing that and reflecting on that at all times. Nishchaya dharma consists of staying tuned to the true nature of the soul with the contemplation that, quote, the worldly life does not belong to me. I am different from it. I am entirely disentangled, pure soul, like the liberated lords. That would be the Jainas, right, of the Jain tradition. Then Srimad Chandra concludes this section of the Moksha Mala by making a general observation about compassion. And this is quite a nice, if you're going to take anything away from this talk today, memorize this quote. There is no compassion where there is unhappiness, loss of wellness, or dissatisfaction of any living being. There is no religion where there is absence of compassion. Every being gains fearlessness by the religion propounded by the graceful lords. If you can do all the pujas you want, and you can have a very elaborate kind of practice that you are engaged in, but if you don't have compassion, it's really kind of a waste of time. Right? Compassion is the essence of spiritual life. So this is coming from a major Jain teacher. I want to turn now to compassionate speech. And this is a theme on which I've spoken a great deal and written on a great deal. I'll just touch on it briefly here, because it's, I think, an important component of this discussion of compassion. Another area where the Jain tradition enjoins compassion is its teaching of the complexity of existence, Anikantavada, and its corollaries, the doctrine of perspectives, Nayavada, and the doctrine of conditional predication, Syadvada. Taken together, these Jain doctrines of relativity map out a way of thinking about difference that can lead to a world not only of mere tolerance, but greater mutual appreciation across varied worldviews. Tolerance is a good thing. It's better than intolerance. But if your friend tells you they tolerate you, you're probably doing something wrong, right? So we want acceptance, right? To be accepted and loved as who we are. So how can we show compassion in our polarized world? And on the next slide, I've got an illustration. This is from America today. And if you follow American politics, you know exactly what this is, right? Everybody's fighting. And I follow Indian politics too, and guess what? Everybody's fighting. Many years ago, I came to India after a long break. When I first lived in India, there were two television networks, Doordarshan 1 and Doordarshan 2. So if you didn't think Doordarshan 1 was exciting enough, you had Doordarshan 2. And if that was all there was, that was all there was. So many years later, I visited India, and I was thinking, I'm looking forward to watching Doordarshan, because our American news is very combative. People are fighting, people are shouting. Doordarshan was very serene. Okay, we're going to hear the agriculture report from Andhra Pradesh. Thank goodness, right? No one's fighting. And then I turned on the television. This is some time had passed. And I turned to a network that you probably all know the name of. And there were 10 people in separate boxes, all shouting at one another at the same time. I couldn't understand any of it. And it was in English, but I had no idea, because they were all talking over each other. So this is what we've come to globally, right? On both sides of the world. America, we do this. India, we do this. So historically, the Jains have always been a minority community in India. This means they've had to learn to coexist with people with views different from their own. The challenge in an environment with diverse worldviews, like India, like America, like the world today, is to practice ahimsa and daya, nonviolence and compassion, while also being true to one's principles, right? You see the tightrope, right? If you overdo the ahimsa in some sense, you can never really overdo ahimsa, but if you react to conflict by simply avoiding it, then maybe there's some very important truth that you could contribute to the conversation that is not going to be spoken. You're allowing the bullies to dominate the room, right? The shouting people. On the other hand, if you overcorrect in the direction of standing firm with your truth, you become one of the bullies. You become one of those shouting people, and nothing changes. So this is more of a Buddhist term, but the idea of a middle path is really what the Jains are developing with these doctrines of relativity. So Anikantavada and the associated doctrines have really been a very clever development that have enabled Jains to navigate controversial issues. So what is Anikantavada briefly? I used the same illustration when I was here a couple of years ago, the multifaceted gem. It's the doctrine of the non-one-sided, literally anikanta nature of existence, affirming the inherent complexity of the cosmos. It's therefore the opposite of reductionism, that would be ekantavada, which seeks to explain all phenomena in terms of some single phenomenon. So for example, if you think of materialism, right? It explains consciousness and everything as the results of material forces. Then on the opposite end you have idealism, where everything is mind and consciousness and materiality is not real. But the Jains say, no, these are both real. For every aspect or facet of an entity, there's also a perspective from which it can be viewed. So this leads us into epistemology, Nyavad, the Jain doctrine of perspectives. And then these both together imply some things about how we ought to make claims about the nature of reality. And our students got to hear this in Sanskrit the other day, right? The monk said to us, Syat asti, right? From one perspective, something may exist, a claim may be true. Then you have Syat nasti, right? From another perspective, it may be false. Then there's Syat asti nasti, right? It can be both true and false. And then it might be beyond description, neither true nor false. Or as the Muni said to us the other day, he referred to this fourth possibility as silence. And I don't know how many of you know Professor Devrakonda from philosophy department, but he was sitting next to me, and I was thinking something, and he turned and he said the same thing I was thinking. He said, we're going to have to rethink how we talk about this. I said, you're right. There is something known as silence. There is that truth which cannot be spoken. And then you have the non-redundant combinations of all of those. You have the 7 aspects of truth according to Jain teaching. So, here we have Obi-Wan Kenobi talking with Luke Skywalker. So let's see, let me go back. So this sevenfold nature of truth is called e-Samvaad, the doctrine of conditional predication. That is, a verbal statement is not absolutely true, but it's true in a certain sense or from a certain point of view. Right? And I don't know if anybody knows what movie this is from, Return of the Jedi, right? So yes. Yeah, things are true from a certain point of view. The monk the other day gave us a wonderful example. He said, like, imagine you have the number 6 written on your hand. You show it to someone, they see what? 9, right? Is it 6? Is it 9? Well, it's in one sense it's 6, in one sense it's 9, in one sense it's 6 and 9, in one sense, so who knows what's going on, right? So this continues. So this is connected with compassion. And traditionally, Jain thinkers have used Ahimsa as a methodology for conceptualizing differences across worldviews. It's very easy to say, well, there are different worldviews because I'm right and everyone else is wrong. But that was unsatisfactory to the Jain thinkers. They said, no, we're all seeing different aspects of reality. We're all right from a certain point of view and wrong from the other point of view, etc. This has been illustrated with the ancient parable of the blind people and the elephant. Each worldview, according to Jain philosophy, reflects a perspective on a complex reality. The claims of all philosophies are therefore true, syat, in a sense or from a certain point of view. So let's continue on. I hope my timing is okay. So we're doing all right. Okay. So, could Ahimsa become a basis for a more compassionate way of communicating with those whose views that are different from our own? Could we use this to get away from the 10 people in the boxes shouting at each other at the same time? Contemporary polarization is based on a very dualistic understanding. I'm right, you're wrong. Right? But while there are deep and genuine disagreements, we all inhabit the same world. We're perceiving different facets of it and having different perspectives on it. And the great Jain philosopher Haribhadra Suri was very insistent on this. Ahimsa is based on metaphysical realism. There is a world, we're all in it. So whatever we're saying is somewhere rooted in that reality. So the challenge is to discern the truth in the other person's perspective, while at the same time affirming our own. That middle path I was speaking of. Continuing on, if we apply Jain philosophy to our contemporary situation, it suggests acknowledging the validity of the experiences and perceptions of others and the limitations of our own, while upholding the validity of our own point of view and gently inviting others to see beyond their limited perspectives. Right? We all have limited perspectives. It's my personal conviction that resolving this issue is vital to human survival. While temperatures go up into the 50 degrees centigrade in India in the summers, and the glaciers are melting, and species are going extinct, we're arguing with each other. We're wasting time, we don't have much time. And so I think this is a philosophy that can help us move forward in that regard. Coming to another Jain value, aparigraha. Aparigraha is one of the 5 central Jain ethical norms, sometimes observed as vows by laypersons, and observed in their strictest sense by the Jain ascetics, the munis and sadhvis. And this literally means non-grasping. Typically it's interpreted as referring to the ascetic practice of non-ownership. Jain ascetics only carry with them what is absolutely required for their livelihood. The basis of the division in the Jain community is over just how much does an ascetic need to live, but the principle is the same. So how is aparigraha, if we continue, how is it related to compassion, giving up things? What does either principle have to do with consumption? Because I want to talk about consumption here briefly. Aparigraha is a traditional Jain practice that's seen as a way of reducing our attachment to worldly things, and most basically material goods. Jain ascetics renounce all ownership, and even Jain householders are expected to give up many of their belongings as they get older. Attachment to worldly things, that's a kashaya, that's a major cause of karmic bondage, because it involves us in desireful action that attracts karmas to the soul. So aparigraha is an antidote to that. So if we continue on, the connection between aparigraha and compassion starts to become evident when we ask the following question. Those things to which we are detached, those things we give up and renounce, what happens to them? Right? Where do they go? They become available for the rest of the world. To renounce is also to give. And you'll see this in the Jain community. We were at a Jain Mandir on Saturday, and various offerings were being made, rice, various types of nuts, and so on. And one of our students asked a very good question. When they clean the surface of the place where the offerings are made, what happens to all of those items? Well, those are food items, so they're not thrown away. They are given away. They are given to feed both people and animals. So, and our guide said something very important. He said, they cannot be taken back into the Jain community. They have to go out. They've been renounced, which means they've been given to others. So, this is important. Not taking more than we need is a way to give to others. If you don't take that extra piece of food or that extra item, whatever it might be, and particularly if you don't hoard belongings, then you're leaving them for others. You're making it available for other people. This is a bit more of an issue, I would say, more than a bit more. It's quite a bit of an issue in my country, where we like stuff and we want all of it, right? But that stuff, we're trying to fill an infinite void with stuff. And you can't, because it's infinite. Only the infinite can fill the infinite void. I have 5 minutes?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have to wind up because next event.
I'll wind up very quick. I can wind up very quickly. So we need to consume less, and this culture of consumption is now coming to India. Now, people in India are much, much better, I think, on this topic, and I don't think I, coming from America, can really lecture you guys about it. But it's important to bear in mind that we should. There's the famous quote of Gandhi that the world has enough for everyone's need, but not everyone's greed. Because time is short, I'm going to move fairly quickly. Let's go to, okay, you're going to, again, this photo. This is where we want to be. So, traditionally Jain ascetics have seen themselves as primarily about withdrawing from the world. The aim of Jain practice is not to transform our society, it's to liberate each of us as individuals. Moksha is not seen as a corporate thing, it's seen as an individual thing. But prominent Jain practitioners have seen the practice of compassion as essential to the purification of the soul, therefore have become involved in work in society, to improve society. Let's skip ahead a little bit. So, okay, so there was that photo of Swami Vivekananda, and then there's another photo of Thich Nhat Hanh. These are both ascetics in Indic traditions that affirmed engagement with the world as an essential part of the spiritual path. And both of them got a lot of disagreement from within their tradition. Same thing's happening in the Jain tradition. So if we move ahead, the work of Acharya Chandanaji, she has this wonderful organization called Virayata, and it does a lot of good for the poor, engaged in education, giving medical care to people. And so you can just stop here briefly. She's very clear about this. She says that ignoring the suffering of others is not spirituality. And harming others is not natural for the soul, kindness and compassion. This echoes what Srimad Bhattacharya said back in the 1890s. For those who think of human nature as inherently violent and selfish, the second statement is especially striking. The soul, in its nature, is kind and compassionate. It's very unnatural for us to be uncompassionate. As radical as she is seen to be by many, including in the Jain community, it's actually a core tenet of Jain thought, which she is reviving and emphasizing. So, if we skip ahead a little bit more, let's go till we get to the photo of Acharya Tulsi. Another very prominent Jain teacher in this regard was Acharya Tulsi, the late Acharya Tulsi, head of the Shwetambar Taripanthi tradition. Rather like Acharya Chandanaji, he saw Jain teaching as obligating one to work for the betterment of society, not exclusively in the sense of renouncing it, but by engaging directly. And with his Anuvad movement, he sought to infuse Indian social and political life with the ethical spirit of the Jain tradition. And so, if we skip ahead to the picture of all the people, this is just one example of how Jainite has inspired and informed all of humanity, right? As I said at the beginning, not only the Jain community. These ideas are relevant to and helpful to all of us. So, thank you all very much for listening. I'm very grateful again to be here.
So, my question is that there is a scripture known as Trojan Sar,
written by Acharya Gurukul.
Yes.
In its first adhyay, there is a Gatha 85.
Yes.
While doing, I am currently doing PhD from Department of Philosophy in Jainism.
Yes.
So while doing research, I came across with this reference. In this verse, he is saying that there are 3 signs of delusion.
Yes.
And second one is absence of compassion.
Yes.
So my question is, how we can we deal with this? That here he is saying that absence of compassion is the sign of delusion.
Delusion, yes. Yeah, then that is in complete agreement with what these modern Jain thinkers like Srimad Rajchandra and Acharya Chandaniji have said. And Kunda Kundacharya, of course, he's an ancient figure in the tradition, especially for the Digambar tradition. And the Pravachanasara is an absolutely central text. And we see this thread of the affirmation of compassion running throughout the tradition. I think that the discomfort I mentioned that some have with a more kind of engaged approach of Jainism is based on a misunderstanding. This concept of compassion has been central from the beginning. It's there in the Tattva Sutra and it's there in Kunda Kunda. So you found a verse that further supports this idea. So thank you.
So when we talk about Samvaad or e-Samvaad,
Yes.
viewing the truth from different perspectives. So sir, my question is, are some truths more truer than others? Or like, are all philosophies equally valid or are some better than others?
I would have to say the second. But it's not something we can prejudge. It's not something we can prejudge. But when we're looking at certain claims, for example, if we subject Jain teaching itself to the analysis of Samvaad, right? So let's take Ahimsa, right? Ahimsa paramo dharmaha. So let's say that is true, that is, Syad Asti, right, from a certain point of view, which would mean there's a point of view from which it is not true. Now that's very challenging. That creates a conundrum. If Ahimsa is your central principle, how could it in some sense not be? So the sense in which it is not would have to be, comparatively speaking, you could say a trivial sense. That is, you're speaking of exceptions. You're speaking, for example, we spoke with the Muni on Saturday. He said the aim is to minimize violence because in the world of samsara there's always going to be violence. Just by occupying this space and breathing, I'm engaging in violence, according to a Jain analysis. But I can minimize it. I can keep it to a minimum. So you could say that sense in which ahimsa paramodhamaha sadnasti, right? If that is a sense in which that's not true, it's the sense in which there is inevitably some violence that we engage in, but we try to minimize it. So it creates that sense that yes, it's our absolute principle. Can we practice it absolutely? Not without giving up the body completely, which some Jains do, incidentally. But what that means then is if you tried to establish violence as a principle on par with nonviolence, that would not work from a Samvada perspective. Because the assumption of the whole system is nonviolence and compassion. But yet there's a recognition that even that central principle has its limitations in this imperfect world of samsara. So that question points to that perfectly.
Thank you for your detailed answer.
Thank you.
When we talk about Aprigrah and Santhar,
Yes.
Salekhana,
Yes.
we tend to see the most wise person of a society to exercise this kind of like tradition
Yes.
for their liberation, spiritual liberation. And if we connect this with the sannyas period of Vedic tradition, it tends to makes the same impact on the society, that we are losing one wise person. And is it ethically justified just for the liberation of one spiritual spirit that we are losing the most wisest person of the society?
I think that is a wonderful question. And I would have to part company a little, I think, with at least the mainstream of Jain thought in responding to this. I think this is why in the Buddhist tradition, the bodhisattvas, despite their yearning for liberation, nevertheless come into the world because their compassion makes them realize they need to be here, right? They could vanish, right, from the cosmos like that. But they choose to remain in order to help the rest of us. Now, I don't want to condemn or criticize someone who has undertaken something like that. It's a very, very difficult thing to undertake. And one can also make the argument that by doing that, they are engaged in a teaching. They are demonstrating to the world the depth of the renunciation that's really necessary for liberation. But that I think it's never been the idea in the Jain tradition that this was expected of everyone, right? And so we have to think of this as a very exceptional thing, a very unusual thing. But I think this is, in one of the slides I skipped over, Acharya Chandaniji has sometimes been called a Mahayana Jain because she's emphasizing so much that because we're all interconnected in this world, we really need to remain in it and engage in compassionate action. I don't think she also would condemn Salekana, but she's not doing that. She's doing something else. And so I think that's in keeping with the spirit of your question. I think it's important to recognize a very beautiful insight of Indian philosophy generally is that there is no one size that fits all, right? There is not a singular morality that's expected of everyone. And so there's certain universal principles, but how we embody those will differ. And there may be some who feel the calling of that ultimate self-sacrifice, and others who say, I mean, Swami Vivekananda in my own tradition said he was definitely going to be reborn. And one of his American disciples said, why? And he said, because I love humanity. So in the spirit of Samvaad, I would want to applaud that and the person who gives up their life.
I have a question from the words presented by Srimad Raj.
Yes.
As he says, there cannot be a religion without compassion. So what do you think that is referring to as a religion? Is it trying to debunk some other religion in those terms that which lacks compassion cannot have the right to be called as a religion?
That's a fantastic question too, because there's plenty of uncompassionate religion around, right? But I think and I noticed this from the 19th century. Swami Vivekananda does this as well. Same time period, 1890s. They often will use the word religion to refer to what I think today we're starting to call spirituality more often, to differentiate from these institutions that sometimes have been violent, have been misused, and been exploitative and harmful. And so I think we would maybe want to insert the word true into, if we could be presumptuous with Srimad Radhachandra's word, is that there's no true religion without compassion. And I think he's referring to his understanding as a Jain, but we also know elsewhere that he has applauded the right virtues that he sees in all religions. So he's not exclusive. But yes, I mean, I think this idea of differentiating is important if we want to recover the positive values in these traditions. Of course, if you're all philosophy students, you know the no true Scotsman fallacy, right? It's like, well, okay, someone's doing something harmful in the name of their religion. We say, well, he's not a true whatever it is. In one sense, that's problematic, but I think in another sense, it's important because we want to reaffirm those values. I used an example of this in class this morning with the students. In the course of our journeys in the last few days, we have heard that the Buddha got rid of caste, Mahavir got rid of caste, Swami Narayan got rid of caste, and Guru Nanak got rid of caste. But there still seems to be caste. So there's the differentiation of the ideal, what it should be, and then how we, in all of our ignorance, imperfectly implement it. Yeah.
Thank you everyone for your inquisitive questions, and thank you sir for answering them so patiently. Now we would like to invite Dr. Bhanu ma'am for summarizing the event and to give her insights.
Audience, I would say, we all are equal if we take the Sanatan and the Jains. So I won't say the teachers and the students and the guests, we all are one, so respected all. It has always been very, very nice to hear somebody as sweet as Professor Long. And it is very difficult to sum up what he said, because what he's saying, and after the questions which the students asked, something was, coming at the back of my mind, that was Sanatana Dharma. And the students who are coming from abroad, they must be seeing that we are hearing so many good things about India, Bharata. Are you seeing the same in practice or not? Some things may be there in the practice, some things may not be there in the practice. But they are in the spirit. Like Professor Long has given major emphasis on compassion.
and he agrees that, and he rightly agrees, at least from my perspective, that translations are very difficult. Once you make a translation, once you translate any term, that becomes difficult. Many of the connotations are loose, they get lost in the way. Compassion, what? Is it karuna? Is it daya? Is it shraddha? Or is it prem? So I think the prem should be the basic. Until unless you do not have that love, you will not be able to do anything. So first and foremost, love must be there. Vasudev Kutumbakam, I love my family, everyone is my family. All of you here are my family. That is what I was saying to Professor Gill also. You are our family. Albright Foundation is our family. We all are family. And it is rightly that if you love someone, you will listen to them. Even if you have difference of opinions, you listen to them. We have that in our homes. We have that in our classrooms, in our meetings. We listen to them. You're saying this? Well, this is my perspective. Sometimes fights are important in order to establish something, and this should not be considered as Ahimsa. Let's take an example. I'll be very brief then Professor Killier take. Let's take an example of a doctor. Doctor is curing you, operating you. You have a disease, he is going for chemotherapy. Ahimsa is done, violence is done, but it's for cure. So the better good is there. So even taking your example, be it Santhar, Salekana, it is for the better good. As he rightly pointed out, the car is now out, cannot go further. So it is better to take another car. The wisdom won't go. And the beauty with Sanatan, be it with the Jain, because I believe Jain is a part and parcel of Sanatan. Because Sanatan is not ancient, Sanatan is not old, because old is something when you go from the historical perspective, that means once upon a time that particular thing happened. It is no more there. We are still there. So we are old and as well as young. We were dead as well as we are living. So we are Sanatan. And Jain is part and parcel of Sanatan. That is one of the reasons that our core concepts, Ahimsa, Satyasya, Brahmacharya, Parigraha, is same everywhere. Take anything, be it the Sanatan, be it the Jain, be it the Bauddhas, and our latest, our baby, that is the Sikh religion. These are the core concepts everywhere. The Seva Bhav which the Hindus have, because Hindu is a generic term for all of them. Hindu is a generic term. Hindu is a dharma. Sanatan is dharma. Sikh is a part and parcel of that dharma. Jain is part and parcel of that dharma. So what is the basic thing? You don't have to bother about the authorship. What we all are doing now. Intellectual rights, this right, my authorship. If you go out for that, that particular thing may belong to you for a particular time. But that thing will be lost in future. For how long can I say, oh, this is my paper, till I am alive? Then what? When the paper is lost, you are lost, everything is lost. What is written in the paper is important. Who wrote it is not important. That is the basic thing which the Bharat has been leading with. This is the reality. There have been many adversaries which we have countered. Our forefathers countered. They encountered many things, brutalities of many sorts. Many of the things came up. And I think, that was a time when Bharat taught that we have seva, we have prema, we have priti, but we also have a slap. Either you get corrected by yourself or we'll make you correct. And Sikhism, I think, evolved from that. Sikhism evolved from that. You are not going to take us for granted. We will stand for our own protection. The way you use that, the bicycles and motorcycles, and you have a helmet. Sikhism is a helmet. It's our shield. It is part and parcel of Sanatan. If you go into anywhere, you will feel that. So what you should learn from at this present moment, that is that we should have that love and affection, but we should not tolerate what is wrong, what is done wrong in the society. You do not be judgmental. Okay, fine. X is a rapist, X is a rapist, okay, fine. I'm not going to kill X. But at least I must have guts to say, are you that person? You won't do hinsa there. This is my personal view. And if somebody is being, ill-treated, at least go there and stand and stare in the eyes of that person who is humiliating. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to raise your hand. The other person will go. And the victim will feel, the person who was victim that way, we will feel, oh, I have somebody. That is the moral strength. That is the spiritual strength which India has and which our youth have. But they have to be awakened. The way Jamavant awakened Hanuman. You all are our Hanumans. And we teachers are, in the role of Jamavant. That you have to awaken you. Oh, you have that power. So, this is what I feel that I am taking from Dr. Long's lecture, his address. And you all should be grateful today that Khalsa College has a holiday. Asti and Nasti, this is something we have, what we have. Now I would request Professor Gill, he is going to give you a brief history of Sikhism. As I said, that Sikhism is our kavach. And the stronger the kavach, the protected you are. Bhay bin hoye na preet. Hinsa nahi hai bhay. It is once you have, but that can only come with a spiritual and moral will. Thank you.
Today's talk was on Ahimsa and Daya, and I am reminded of what Guru Nanak Dev Ji said about that Daya, the religion is the child of Daya. Dharma is the son of Daya. So all that Dharma is based on, if Daya is there, then Dharma is there. If Daya is not there, Dharma is not there. So this is what we read every morning in Japji Sahib, Dal Dharm Daya Ka Poot. So, and Dharma, I think sometimes we translate it wrongly as the religion in Western terms. Dharma is the law. It is the foundation of all the universal happenings. So Dharma is the vidhi, like the law of gravitation. So it's not religion, it's Dharma. So Daya is the same. Daya is the mother of Dharma. So that's why the talk of Ahimsa, it's very enlightening, the talk of Ahimsa today. But at the same time, as Madam Bhanuji, today is the birthday Guru Parv of the 10th Sikh Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji. That's why our college, Khalsa College, has a holiday today. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji taught us a different perspective on the same Daya and Ahimsa and compassion, that others will have compassion towards you only when you have power. There is no compassion for the weak in this world. So Dharma's purpose is to protect the weak and to oppress the oppressor as well. It's the dual duty of Dharma. It's not the protection of the weak. That is why we worship when the prayer, Sikh prayer begins with the invocation to Bhagavati Ji. And Bhagavati Ji is the goddess as well as the sword. What we hold in our hand at that time in Gurdwara sometimes is sword. So Bhagavati Ji is the incarnate, sword is the Bhagavati Ji incarnate. They Chandi. Guru Gobind Singh Ji wrote about Chandi. the worship of Chandi. And Chandi, from Guruji wrote that it was from Chandi that Bhagwan Ram took his power. It was from Durga ji that Bhagwan Krishna took his power to kill Kans. Bhagwan Ram took his power to kill Ravan. Okay. So this is the power of this Guru Gobind Singh Ji. What he did, he educated the people about the militant tradition of Sanatana. For a very long time, the militant tradition of Sanatana was forgotten. It was only there in Sanskrit language. And Sanskrit language was not everybody's cup of tea, even today. It's very difficult language. You need to spend a lifetime to learn this language. So it was the militant tradition of Sanatana Dharma was only in Sanskrit. All our gods of Sanatana, they were armed. I don't remember even a single god who was not armed. So what is the purpose of being armed? To kill the oppressor and to protect the weaker from the perpetrator of the evil doing. Okay, the protection. Okay, as your name?
Jasmine.
Jasmine asked the question that why society loses one wise person as sannyasa. Guru Nanak Dev Ji said same thing. That if you are wise, spend your wisdom in the upliftment of the society. So Sikhism is just a renunciation of renunciation. Sannyas ka tyag. That is what. So this was how Guru Gobind Singh Ji said actually he introduced all this tradition into the Indian language that is called Bhakha. And since most of it was in Punjabi and this entire region, North India, all Sikh Gurus have their pan-Indian presence from Assam to this area to South India, everywhere, and they are better known there in those areas. So, so they just revived this idea, gave that there was no place for weakness in our tradition in Sanatan. So he rewrote and reintroduced all these ideas, militant tradition among the followers in Gurmukhi language, in other languages Bhakha. Chandi Charitra is actually written for this purpose. That if it is not, you cannot understand Sanskrit, then read and recite daily in Bhakha. Okay, and you will have all your problems solved. This was the role of Guru Gobind Singh Ji in Khalsa Panth in establishing. Guru Gobind Singh Ji was fighting against the oppressive rule of Mughals. One side, on the other side he was fighting against the caste system, because it was the caste system that kept India vulnerable. You know, there was no place for caste in Sanatana. Swami Dayanand Ji himself said this. That is why Swami Ji felt the need for Arya Samaj to give us the idea of that Sanatana that was before all these problems of untouchability and all the problems of that which cropped up later on. So this is my tribute to Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Very briefly, Sikhism detail we talk some other day. Second, I am here to pay my tribute to Swami Dayanand Ji and Mahatma Hansraj Ji. Yes, this college is named after Mahatma Hansraj Ji, and Mahatma Hansraj Ji has done a great service to the people of Punjab especially, because Delhi, you know, before partition it was, even after partition it was part of Punjab. So the entire area of Punjab, Mahatma Hansraj Ji, he was the first person in North India who admitted women in the higher education. Women for the first time were given right to get school education under the guidance of Swami Dayanandji and Mahatma Hansraj. DAV is the movement which educated our mothers and grandmothers in Punjab. This is for the first time, and it was very difficult, very radical idea to put your daughters into schools which were taught by the men in late 19th century. There was so much opposition. But then, due to this, there is great institution, HMV, KMV in Jalandhar. Punjab, North India is indebted to DAV movement. And what was this? Swami Dayanandji and Mahatma Hansraj their response to British colonialism. British colonialism was saying us that you are not civilized. And it was our response. Khalsa colleges are also the part of the same story. Khalsa colleges and DAV colleges. They are response to British colonialism, that we teach our young men and women better than you do, and we have our own Indian tradition of education. Interestingly, NEP, after so many years, is alive to the same idea of Indian knowledge tradition. So it was the DAV and Khalsa colleges which were earlier response to the colonialism, that we will have our education of English as well as of the Indian knowledge system. So these were the great people, Mahatma Ji, Hansraj, and I was very blessed today to see the chair that belonged to Mahatma Ji. And these institutions have played a great role. Today we take these things granted, that these are the colleges like any other college. These are not the colleges like any other college. Because if you read their life stories, they were opposed by the society. And they did not have much material resources. That was also one of the things. There was opposition from all the sides, and there were very little sources. But the commitment towards the cause of education, especially of women and so-called untouchables. So Mahatma Ji hit at all those vulnerabilities. He gave education to women and the weaker sections, and they created a strong society. Even when we were under the British, but Mahatma Ji was doing his role. I don't think many of you must not be aware that Bhagat Singh was the student of that DAV college where Mahatma Ji was the founder. So the idea of nationalism, you can see the source of nationalism, say Indian nationalism, from where it comes. And Bhagat Singh also believed in the same, that they will show respect to you only if you have power. So that is how this entire tradition is there. And third, my tribute is to Professor Mahendra Singh Oberoi ji, who thought, although he spent his life in the service of science, but science is incomplete without the true knowledge of religion. Absolutely, because the science is nothing before religion. Religion is actually the real science of the universe. So there is a little difference. So that's why he gave all this. This foundation is working for the promotion of the understanding of religion, not preaching of religion. We must be. He was very was very clear in his idea, not preaching but understanding. And understanding is the main thing of all religions. I got so enlightened by the words of Professor Jeffrey Long today on the Jainism and all that. And one last line, that how there have been Jain devotees who have contributed to Sikhism as well. Few days back, there was Veer Bal Divas, the martyrdom day of young Sahibzada of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And you must have heard that they were cremated. by paying a huge sum of gold. And who paid that gold? Todermal Oswal, again a Jain devotee of the Sikh Gurus. So we have, this is the Indian tradition. This is the Indian tradition where difference does not matter. The unity and mercy and to see everyone as the family. Okay. Othering is not, I think Sanatan does not believe in othering. And that is where the message of world peace lies. Thank you very much.
Now I'll invite Preeti ma'am for the vote of thanks. Sir, she's the one who has worked tirelessly to make this event a successful one. Thank you.
So I would start by saying poet's verse, दया धर्म का मूल है, पाप मूल अभिमान, तुलसी दया न छोड़िए जब तक घट में प्राण. So compassion, daya is the root of dhamma, and vices are the root of ego, and Tulsi is the name of the poet. He says that do not leave daya, do not leave compassion till the time you have life. So this whole session was about the compassion, and we have looked at that whether it is Sanatan Dharma, Vedic Dharma, Jain Dharma or Sikh Dharma, all promote daya, compassion. And this session is one of my favorite sessions. I mean, the duty to deliver the gratitude to all those who made the event successful and possible. So first and foremost, I extend my sincere thanks to Professor Jeffrey for being here today and choosing Hansraj College for his students to experience this enriching cultural exchange and dialogue about Indian culture with our students. And I'm one of the luckiest person in academia who had the privilege to work with you, sir. So your kindness and support have always been a source of inspiration, and we are deeply grateful for your presence today. Thank you so much, sir. My heartfelt thanks to Professor Amanpreet Gill, sir, for choosing Hansraj College as the venue for his insightful talk and for being an integral part of this event. Your inclusion has made this seminar multifaceted, sir, offering our student exposure to the varied and profound dimensions of the Bharatiya Parampara, Indian tradition. Thank you so much, sir. I am deeply grateful to Professor Mahua, Professor Yashwant, Anu Bhatia ma'am, Jyoti ma'am, and Shri Bharat Bhushan sir for gracing the event with their presence and extending their unwavering support to the educational trip undertaken by the students through the Oberoi Foundation. Your participation has greatly enriched the proceedings, and we are truly honored to have you all here. A special mention and my heartfelt gratitude go to our beloved principal ma'am, whose vision and encouragement inspired us all to aim higher and achieve greater milestone. I also thank all the students who have joined from the non-Indian university, from the Loyola Marymount University, Naropa University, and Oberoi Foundation. I would also like to thank Bhanu ma'am, the convener of this program, and for her tireless efforts in organizing this event and for sharing a deep knowledge of Vedic values, which added immense depth to our discussion. I extend my gratitude to our TIC, Dr. Rajesh, and all the faculty members of our department for their constant support and guidance. A special thank to the faculty member from the other department. I saw Sandhya ma'am from the Sanskrit department joined here, and other faculties from different departments were also here. A big thank you to the Mimamsa team, our student society, philosophy student society, whose meticulous planning and hard work ensure the seamless execution of this event. And my heartfelt appreciation goes to all the students who participated with enthusiasm and criticism. And thanks to the Mehta sir and Seni sir for recording this event and keeping the memories intact. So once again, thank you everyone for joining the event. Have a pleasurable day. Thank you.